Who knows? Okay. I love it when there are people waiting. It makes me feel so appreciated. What's up, everyone? Hopefully, I've got all of the audio and everything. I'm kind of scrambling to get everything together this morning. It was a long week last week, so sorry I wasn't able to get a live stream going Friday. I was planning on doing one from my grandparents. They have a farm out in the middle of nowhere, Alabama. Um, but I have Starlink, but there was also really bad storms on Friday in Alabama, so uh, there wasn't really good upload. The download's fine. Getting it from the satellites is cool, but the upload speed wasn't good enough to have a consistent stream. So anyway, welcome back to the channel and the stream, and uh, I'm so glad. Hopefully you had a good weekend. Hope you had a good last week, productive last week, or unproductive if you were supposed to be unproductive. I was on LinkedIn and looking at one of these owners. He sent the "Am I doing this right?" like thing, and it was a picture of his laptop and uh, on the beach. And I'm like, I responded to it. And I'm like, "Yeah, that checks out. Owner of an automation company, Daniel." Just if Daniel, if you sir me in chat, I'm gonna mute you. uh, but yeah, so this guy's like on the beach. He's got his laptop out and he's like working, and I'm like, I mean, that's not how you do vacation, but that is how an owner of any sort of automation company does it for sure. But anyway, welcome to the stream, everyone. My name is Jason Watts. I am the CEO and founder of a little automation company out of Tuscaloosa, Alabama, called Alpha Industrial Technologies. I am previously spent about a decade of my life working for a Siemens distributor as a drives and motion consultant, and I've been doing this full-time thing for Alpha for, I don't know, like 3 years now, but got about 20 or so years of Siemens experience. So yeah, welcome to the stream. If this is the first time you're on the stream, just kind of say hey in chat. If it's not the first time on the stream, say hey in chat. So if you're here watching, just say hey, because we're trying to build a community here, and honestly, we might actually hit 1,000 subs on this stream. So you could be part of history if you haven't subscribed yet. You could be part of history today. I mean, not very important history. It's kind of important to me, I guess. But yeah. So we are going to do not motion control today. Last week, we had a couple of requests to kind of go over some HMI topics and things. We were talking about, well, I guess it wasn't last week, maybe whenever the last stream was. Um, the we were talking about 1200s, and I was planning on going and kind of doing a little bit more in-depth stream on the PLCs, but then I also had a couple other people who were like, "Hey, can you touch base on some of the HMI topics?" And I'm like, you know, that is actually where I got started working in kind of like my automation space, and my experience like actually doing work was on HMIs. So I'm like, hey, maybe that would be a good thing for us to kind of go through. And it's usually the best way to kind of get an understanding of connections and software and equipment, and you're not probably going to mess something up so bad that it causes damage or like injures somebody. um, and so it's kind of a good segue into it. So yeah, the silence though, sorry, me and my ADD self, I've got to get something going here, at least in my head. I noticed last week or last time I went too far. I like turned the audio up one time, and I had some people request that I turn it down. And then last time I turned it down too far to where it didn't show up on or didn't sound on stream. So that's you. Hold up. This is probably gonna blow y'all. Oh. I gotta make sure that. Yeah, that would have like been way too loud. Let's see. Sorry about this. Trying to get all of this stuff together. Got a busy week this week. What y'all? Anybody else got a busy week? We've got a called International Poultry Production Show in Atlanta this week, and it's an agriculture show, and it goes through kind of a lot of like egg production, pork, just beef, just kind of like feeding and processing animals, things like that. We don't do any of the processing side, but we deal with once the animals have processed their food, we deal with that sort of stuff at Alpha. We have some 100% organic fertilizer plants that we're doing. Oh yeah, Daniel, we're cut from the same cloth. One of those old timey phrases. All right, so maybe this won't be too loud. Maybe y'all tell me if it's too loud. All right, just got a little bit going there. But anyway, so we're going to be talking about HMIs today. Now that I'm back on topic, so that's going to shut off. This. All right, so we're going to talk about HMIs today. If you're not really familiar with the product line from Siemens, I'm going to pull this over here. And again, I'm going to pull up a little page from the Siemens Industrial Mall. If you're not familiar with what that is, it is your spot to get kind of information about current products that Siemens sells, Siemens industrial products that are available to you in your region. Let me go over here. Here. Yeah. If I want to be this corner. That's a good corner. Okay. So this is the Siemens Industrial Mall. It will offer all of kind of your any products that are available to you in your region. And we've got today we're going to be talking about the two different levels of HMI devices. Technically, I say there's two. There's really three. But if you go to iMall in your region and you log in and it looks a little bit different than what you're seeing here, that's because I'm logged into the US Industrial Mall up here. Yeah, right there. And we honestly have different products and different availability for different things. So like if you just so happen to be in like either China or India, your iMall will have different products available to you that we do not actually have access to in the US. For example, you have it's a S7200 in China. I think it's like the CN, and then there's a S7200 something else in India, but they're kind of the older models that you can still get. We can't get those. You also have like drives available to you, like the V20, the V60, and the V90. We can get the V20s and the V90s, but they're not nearly as cost effective because we had some tariffs that got put on Chinese products that make it in the US not quite as attractive from a price standpoint. So just all that to say, I'm on this iMall, so if it looks different, don't worry. If you don't have something on here that I have, I mean, shoot a comment on this, and we'll see if we can figure out what's going on there. But we're talking about comfort panels to start out. They're kind of your your standard panel, very high featured. If you are coming from if you're coming from like a Rockwell or Allen Bradley world or some other background, this is going to be kind of your top end, top performance panel. But you'll find if you actually quote these that they are, if you're looking at like a Rockwell panel, an Allen Bradley panel, those are going to be much less, most likely, than what you would be getting with a Rockwell. In my experience, it's about half the price. But again, my Rockwell distributor probably doesn't like me, and so they probably probably have increased pricing to me. But anyway, we have three different types of panels that are in the line. You have the comfort panel, which is kind of your go-to panel. They are trying to shift them away into what is called the unified comfort panel, but it's a kind of totally different style of working, and we're not going to be touching on those today because there are a considerably different. But there is a lower end version, or a lower feature version, I should say, called the basic panel. And over here in this tree, you can see these the basic HMIs, key panels, and basic panels. You with those, you get kind of the major features, but you also don't get a it's kind of like random stuff that you don't get. You can still use templates. They're just restricted in some ways. You could still do animations. They're just restricted. Like, and we'll talk about some of the difference when we actually get into it. But these comfort panels, if you're wanting a full featured HMI to do whatever you want with them, this is where you're going to never kind of back yourself into it. You've got full scripting and all sorts of stuff on this. So, yeah. So we kind of got the sizes here. It's TFT displays, 4-inch, 7-inch, 9-inch, 12, 15, 19, and 22. So I normally, on all of my automation panels, I don't use the comfort panels. I use the little basic panels for, and I use the 7-inch basic panels on my remote IO stations. That's about as small as you can go and actually be able to operate it with an adult's finger, just because the buttons tend to get really small on a 7-inch. There is a 4-inch. If you're going to be using the 4-inch or you're thinking about using it, they are very inexpensive. I mean, they're very cost effective for what they are. I think for the basic panel, I want to say it was like $350, $400 or something US dollars for a 4-inch. And I mean, that little 4-inch also has all of the features that we're going to talk about today. So, but the problem is you pretty much have the ability to have 3 buttons on screen on a 4-inch HMI because they're pretty small. The 22-inch panel, honestly, is kind of ridiculously large. It's so large that you would almost want to go to kind of like a SCADA platform at that point, because like it has it's just so big. I use 19 inches on, if I want a 19, or if I want to have kind of like a main panel that I could put a lot of stuff on, I use that 19 inch. So the 22 is really large, and honestly, it just feels like a screwdriver magnet. I don't know about you guys, but it seems like all the guys that work in the plants that I'm at, they don't want to touch it with their finger. It's always like they're wanting to touch it with the screwdriver or something to, like, I don't anyway, sorry, there might be trauma there from the coal mines. Coal miners are not known to be gentle. But so we could talk some of the main features that we're going to talk about today. You have 2 different options. You have a Profi-Bus option and a Profi-Net option. Some of the larger ones, yeah, I think it says here 15-inch has both ports, but you can get these in Profi-Net and Profi-Bus. The Profinet driver, or the Profinet version, has a bunch of different drivers that you can do Ethernet IP. You can do like any Ethernet based protocol, and then there's a serial port that can do the serial based protocols as well. So pretty cool on that portion of it. I will say, we were kind of talking about Rockwell, and sure, you're not using the Rockwell software, but you can get all of these features pretty easily with Rockwell, and Rockwell doesn't even, like, this panel doesn't even have to be in your Rockwell project, like your Allen Bradley project. I've got a video talking about how it does that using what's called the SIP interface. Like, we talked about some of the addressing in another live stream, but yeah, look that up. There's a video about using a SIP block, and yeah, so the Allen Bradley PLC doesn't even have to know that you're even have an HMI out there, the way these are connected up. So if you like what you see here, you can have it even if you're working with a Allen Bradley processor. So a couple of other things that we have in here is you have an SD card that can hold recipes, data. It can even hold like user manuals, PDFs, stuff like that. Then you also have the ability to use a flash drive. So if you want to pull off some historical data or something, you could pull off that and put it into onto a flash drive. Lastly, and which I think is probably one of the coolest features with both the basic and the advanced HMI, is this called Smart Server. And this is really cool. I would like to have that whole line selected. There we go. That Smart Server, because it gives you remote access to the panel as long as you are on the network. So if you can get a network path, or you're connected into the network, like your Ethernet, the OT network, then you can actually, you don't have to go over to that device to actually operate it. You're sitting there starting something up, you just enable the Smart Server, and I'll show you how to do it. And yeah, you can just use a little client on your laptop to be able to pull up that HMI, and then you can operate it. I use that because we've got a couple plants all over the US that we support, and I have to use it because I can log in and just be like, all right, you see that button that's in the bottom right of that screen that you're on, just click that. And then if they're needing some more help, I can kind of show them and click through the screens and stuff like that. So that's built in, included in the standard license for both the basic panel and the comfort panel. So super cool. Kind of talked about everything else. It has all of your basic functions that you're wanting, like we talked about with the kind of animations and toolboxes and standard stuff. I'm sure that if you use a lot of advanced features with the HMIs and kind of like different tool sets in like a power panel or whatever, yeah, the Allen Bradley versions, there might be some specific like tool thing that isn't there, like a plugin, but for the most part, anything that you could do in anybody else's panels, you'll be able to do in a comfort panel. And yeah, this is kind of like all technical data. You don't really care about that. If you want, I will copy this and put this over in the chat. Y'all want to kind of look at this list, and yeah. So without any more, if anybody has any questions or anything, like if you're here in chat, just go ahead, throw them in there, and I'll try to get to them. This is a little bit relaxed, and yeah, we're here to build a community and learn together. I'm probably going to learn a lot because I kind of didn't have enough time to test everything I wanted to talk about today, but we are doing kind of a introductory stuff. So if I can't do this stuff, then I need to be shamed. But yeah, if this is your first time on one of our streams, welcome. I try to do these every week. The past couple of weeks have a little bit of schedule differences, but try to have a live stream once a week and try to drop scripted content as much as possible. But if you have a suggestion for a video, if you have a question about something you'd like to see, drop a comment. So I'm going to bring up our TIA portal version 17. And this is our project that we've kind of been building over the past couple of live streams, just random stuff in it. If you remember, we did some load sharing applications with G120s with a 1200, then showed you how to do that on a S120. Then we've started adding in like some things for 1200 PLCs, like IO device, and all of those during the previous live streams. And if you haven't noticed, if you've gone back and been looking at the live streams, the most recent ones don't have the chapters, and that's intentional because I'm learning this whole like YouTube thing, and apparently the algorithm is one thing on launch day, and then it's one thing after a couple of days, and then it changes. And so after a couple of days, I'm going to be going back in and adding in the chapters. I've just got to figure out the timing on all the YouTube algorithm, because it seems like these things, when everybody's on and commenting, it gets it out there and we get a lot of traction. And then after a couple of days, it seems like the algorithm needs a refresh because we're not getting the same amount of people. So I am going to put chapters into these videos to help you kind of click through, but it'll probably be the next week when I update them. But so here's our system. We're going to add in, you can see here, we've already done the basic HMI. And if you don't remember what we did there, we actually did direct parameter access with this basic HMI to where we accessed without even using the PLC. We got data from a Dynamics drive just by using a little trick of naming some tags. So what we're going to do now is I want to just add in a new device, and let's go to an HMI, and let's just put a somatic. Let's just do a 15-inch. I've got a couple of these in our shop, and let's just go with the 01 version. To do online with a basic panel. I'm not exactly sure what the question is, but there definitely is a way to view the panel online, and that's using the smart server. So like a remote version where you can log in remotely, you can do that. But the way that you download to the HMIs, there's not kind of like a live update, and I'm not sure if that's what you're working. You kind of make your changes and do a download, and it updates it, and then it comes back, and then you can go back and use that smart client to look at it, to actually view the HMI from your laptop. But yeah, so hopefully that answers your question. If not, I will keep trying. So here is kind of like the HMI device wizard, and again, I'm using Siemens PLCs, but you can absolutely have other PLCs here that are based on different drivers, and I'll show you how to do that. For this though, we're just gonna connect it up to, we'll just do our 1500. Doesn't really matter for this, because we're going to be just kind of setting up a basic panel. So we'll click through here. A lot of this other stuff that kind of steps you through, but honestly, we're going to, so this has a header in it, so we're not going to do this. So on our alarms, these are just kind of set up. These are things that we're going to do. So these are just some of the standard settings, and you can go through and kind of configure different screens this way. And honestly, this is kind of cool. See, we're all learning stuff. I've never used this screen. This is nice because, and then you can say from that screen it goes to this screen, and then could you go back? Yeah. So you can kind of create like a tree here. But I'm going to show you how to link this stuff as well. We didn't have that. So we'll do this. We'll go next, and system screens, stuff like that. You could play around with those. That's more of kind of a high-end thing, but okay, we'll see what that does. Not sure. Honestly, normally when I just come into that, I select the PLC and hit finish and then set all that up myself. So I may have just completely jacked everything up, but it'll be funny either way. Do it for the content. So as we're going through here, oh yeah, this has like the template. So that's what that's doing there. So first thing we see is we have a couple of template areas that's set up. We have a couple buttons that link to other screens. That's what that setup wizard was, and I see why I normally just skip that. So first thing I'm going to go through and do is okay, so RAF says, I mean, is it possible to do monitoring your laptop without your original program, the HMI, the only backup for ProSave? So if you want to do monitoring, if you're just monitoring, what you would do is you would use that smart server. So I'll show you something. So you have this little client here called Smart Client, and I'll show you how to set up the screen for it. And when you open it, it opens up this little connection, and you just type in the IP address of that connection. And if you've set it up, you'll set it up with a password, and you can actually go in, and depending on the password that you use, you can either set up one for read only, so you can monitor, but then there's also write access where you can actually control from this little client. And so that, if I understand what you're saying, is that would do that. You would not need even a ProSave backup for this. Now, if you have a backup file that you're wanting to load, that takes a little bit of a setup on the compact flash, or not the compact flash card, the SD card. And you can load them that way. And I don't know if we'll get to that. That's a little bit more of an advanced topic that honestly I would have to prepare for, because honestly I have most of the backups. But if you're just wanting to pull up a screen from your laptop, this is a tool that's completely outside of Portal. It's completely outside of everything. So yeah, let's get Portal back up. So you would just use this smart server, SmartAx. So this is called Smart Client, and it is just its own little tool. And I'll show you. We'll go ahead and show you where to set that up. So in your device and networks, out here, you would just click. I have my inspector window closed, so I'm going to hit Control 5. Bring this up. I'm going to click Properties tab. Make sure that is clicked, and then that one would have to be again. Where's all of this? Where am I looking? Like I said, probably should have gone through and made sure I knew where all of this was, because I was planning on talking about this. It's definitely under here. Information, advanced options, general, no. Where is this? I think I'm just clicking on the wrong thing. Because it's just a little check button that says enable smart server. Why am I missing it? Yeah, so this is actual content. Yeah, so there's a button here, and I will, if I don't find it here in a second, I will absolutely go back through, and as we're kind of talking about something else. Yeah, I don't know why I can't find it right now, but there is a way to just click and enable smart server. There's also a little setup on the actual screen itself that when you boot it up, it doesn't have to be enabled in the project. You can actually, I mean, you have to do it anyway because you have to set the password up from the actual HMI itself. And so when you boot up the HMI, there's most of the time it sits there and has the little start screen for a second, and you click settings on it and pop out and then go over to, there's, I want to say it's WinCC internet settings or something like that. And then up at the top, there's a thing for smart server. And in that is officially where you have to go through and set it up. And so you go through on the screen to set that up. I think I have a document that I'll try to pull up to show you how to do that. And if not, I will put a link in the description of this live stream in order to actually a link to the document showing you how to do that. If not, I might just do a short because it is really easy to set up the smart access on the screen. I just don't have a screen here that I could power up and actually show. So I may do a little video about how to set that up. But yeah, so a couple of things that I was wanting to kind of talk about just with the basics of these HMIs and how to get started with the HMIs is you have your standard basic objects, which are text, images, boxes. So like rectangles, you can kind of build things, and everywhere that kind of the way this works to modify and tweak everything is in this inspector window, just kind of like standard in all of Portal. You have the properties, and then all of the options that you have for this little box that we just put in here is available here. So if we want to make the border a little bit bigger, we can change the style to like a dash line, a dash box, and obviously I clicked off right there. Whatever you click on is going to be down in this bottom properties. If you click on multiple items, then it will only show what is available for all items. Or in this case, it's obviously there's no transparency. Well, actually there is a transparency on this. So yeah, it tries to figure out like what things are. Most of the time, if you select multiple boxes of the same type, it'll let you change all those properties at the same time. So you can change those like that, and it only changes the ones that you change. Or so kind of cool on that. Super basic stuff. Apparently when you do transparent, you can't click in the middle. So yeah, so different things. You can change your colors. One of the things that I always like to do is I use it's like a free version of I appreciate it. I appreciate the love. So yeah, one of the things that I use is, especially when you're doing HMI work, you're gonna want to have a little bit of understanding of how to use a tool like I use GIMP, the uh, graphical image manipulation something program. It's an open source version of Photoshop basically, and you can get that. You can download that for free, and it has a lot of really good tools. One of the things that it has is a color picker, and if you can pull up an image and just pick a color, and then you can get these RGB values, and then you can just go in and put in your RGB values, but you also have your different HSL of way of getting your colors. But you can kind of like any RGB value you can put in here. It has some standard ones here, and then you can kind of go through and tweak out your colors. I mean, most of us in here are probably male, and so all of these colors look the same. That's purple, 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 purple. Yeah, and then oh, that's blue, 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 blue. But yeah, you get it. So that's how you can kind of make your colors, and you have a set of user-defined colors that you can go through and you can define them, and you can kind of set up your different colors like that. And so just click on the user-defined color and then click on your colors, and then you can go through there. And now when you go back, you actually have those down in user-defined colors. So pretty quick, simple. But if you've never used HMI software like that, like you might stumble across that eventually. But yeah, one of the things is the layout on these is by pixels, and I always forget which, like, it starts. So let's see. For this one, yeah. So it starts, the top of the screen is 0, and the left, or sorry, the right. So the left is 0, top. So top left is 0, and that might be. So like if let me make sure that I say this right. Yes, 0, and then 0. Yeah. And if you notice, that didn't go all the way up to the top screen, and it's because we have this toolbar that we configured, and we might change that in a minute. But this was stuff that came in because of the little toolbar, and I'll show you how to change that here in a second. Just wanted to touch base through a couple of the basic options here. So if you want this thing flashing and annoying your operator all the time, you can set this to flash standard enabled, and it will flash between the flash colors. And please don't do that. Just if you want your operators to hate you, put an always flashing thing on the screen. Just, yeah, don't. So I'll tell you a little story. When I first started working with these comfort panels, I figured out how to do scripting, and there's some like weird in your, what's it called, the graphic toolbox folder. We might go into that a little bit, but I found this like little hamburger. It's like a hamburger man. I don't know why it is. Apparently it's something. And so I just set up a script to like time out like every 1,000 hours or so, that little hamburger would fall on the belt and then just like skate all the way through the belt and then just like fall onto the coal pile and disappear. And I don't know if anyone's ever noticed that script, but yeah, just I was playing around and trying to figure out scripting, trying to figure out how to do the little motion stuff on it. So there's some fun stuff that you could do with this, but always think about who's gonna be looking at your screens with stuff like flashing and stuff like that. So we've got things like text that we could do. So text format is where you're gonna actually set your font, how big it is. And so you can click on the little dots over here and kind of come up into an interface where you can pick your different stuff, italic, bold, italic, your size, and it will adjust it accordingly. And so one of the things that there's also on text is, I think it's on the layout. Yeah, so this little fit object to contents button on your text, if it is unchecked, you can see how this takes up the same amount of space no matter what. And one of the things that is really good about that is if you kind of know you might have some pages of title, it's good to have just like this take up a lot across the screen, so that you can kind of define your space. If you don't, you can't really do things like, well, there are some things that will limit you if you don't have this checked. Like for example, we're going to click fit object to contents, and you notice that it shrunk everything down to the box. And so it moved that box. Well, if we wanted to center this back up in the screen, we can go up here, click on our object, go up to this little alignment tab, and this center object on the screen vertical, and it'll center it back up. That thing was centered before, and kind of goes from there. Now, I just want to show you a couple of alignment tools. So I'm going to click Control C, Control V, and if I go through and align this back up and get this, all right, I like that alignment. If I just keep hitting Control V, it'll copy all of that at that same offset. And so pretty cool little feature there. Now, if I go in and I am changing, now it's off because I changed that like the spacing and everything on it. So what we could do now is I want to align everything up to this guy. Okay, and there's a couple of different ways that I can do that. So if you're doing these alignment tools, you can take and click on the object that you don't want to move first, and then hold down Shift and click everything that you want to start aligning to that first object. Go back up to your alignment. And so if we wanted to center all of these up, we could click center, and you've noticed everything shifted over and is centered up on the line that we changed. Now we can do a left justified alignment, and that kind of looks like what it was before. And we can also do a right justified alignment, and it moves it across. So those are kind of your basic tools, and you can kind of play around with those just to kind of get a feel with it. This double center, that's actually going to center those objects together. So obviously if you have text, you're not going to want to do that. But say that we have this box here, and we have this thing, or actually this box, this is the one we want because it's kind of cool, right? Well, if I want to move this and have it centered up on this, I would click on the box, hold Shift, click on the object I want to put in the center of it, and then click on this little center object. There you go. Now, sometimes, oops, Control Z, sometimes that'll happen. So Control Z is your friend. Sometimes it will look like this when you come in to do that. And so, and if when you do that, your layers are wrong, by default, the order that you bring in your object is going to be the order that it stacks up on your visibility. So we have two objects here. What's on top of the other? You have to pick. The easiest way to kind of correct this sort of situation, especially if you have like a box or something like this, just because I cannot select directly the thing that's underneath that box. Now, if I do this, you can see that there's multiple objects selected, and then I could hit Shift and unselect the box if I wanted to bring this up front, right? But I could also just take and instead of, I just click on whatever's there and I'm like, okay, that needs to be in the very back. And I have it selected now. You just click this send to the back and it sends it all the way to the back, and everything else is on top of it. So if there's any sort of like problem, then it's going to fix that. So that should be over that now. Even though these buttons were on the screen when I drew this box. So yeah, so these are basic objects. Let's talk about a couple of different options. So we want a button, for example. We want a start button. Put that on here. We can bring this in. By default, it kind of looks pretty cool. It's got these like shaded options and things like that. So it looks kind of nice. But we want to make this to be a start button. The monitor. So the other question, we got another question about monitoring as well. With this, there's no way to actually monitor the program, kind of like simulate or anything like that. The only way to actually have the monitor would be to simulate it or to have the actual monitor running. It's a little bit different than a PLC in as much as it's essentially its own computer, and so it has its own version of Windows CE in this version. So you actually are kind of you have to log into a computer in order to monitor it in real time. That's why you have that little smart client server. And I think that's a VNC connection, if you're familiar with what that is. And so you can actually just use a different VNC client as well. But no, there's no way to just hook up to an Ethernet cable and monitor these. And they're the only way that you can pull a backup of the HMI. So you can't pull a program and then modify it and then download it. You can only pull a backup and then copy back that backup back onto it. You have to have a program in order to make any modifications. So unfortunately for that question, the answer is no. You can't do it without that client or setting up ahead of time. But that's a really good question, because that's one thing that you run into a lot, especially like in my world, where I go into a lot of plants. Someone calls me up and be like, "Hey, Jason, we're in trouble. We need you to come save us." And I get there, and I'm like, "Oh, this is using a recipe that's in the HMI, and I've had this before with OEM piece of equipment, and I can't touch the HMI." And so I'm having to figure out how to modify it like on the back end just to get them running, because they have like a button or something that's on the HMI and I only have access to the PLC. And a lot of times you'll have a PLC program, but you won't have the HMI program. And so, yeah, it's a little bit annoying, I guess, to the user. To an OEM, someone that's actually building the equipment, it's a nice feature, because you don't want someone coming in and changing your screen and modifying and taking like your logos and taking your stuff off and changing the way that it is, and then coming back and be like, "Well, why did it work?" Yeah, yes, I know this, Lucid. They also allow you to modify your program, modify their program and have access to their tags with no security. so just because Allen Bradley does it doesn't necessarily mean it's the best solution. But yes, Allen Bradley does have that feature to where you can pull a program and then modify it and go around it. And from a programmer standpoint, it absolutely it's great. From a machine builder's standpoint, it's not always as good, because there's definitely perspective. And like when you're at the plant and your machine builder will not like answer an email, and they won't get back with you on something, and you can't get them out there, and they're the only ones, it's super frustrating. And I get it. Like I've like under my breath, like just been furious with OEMs before, and many times. And I personally do not like being that type of OEM that locks all my stuff up and kind of like keeps it close to where you can't go in and fix your equipment. I personally don't like that. But as we have started building more and more equipment and started putting in more and more time into things, sometimes if you get in there and you start messing with stuff, you might not realize that, oh yeah, that HMI button that you changed, it actually had a script on the back end involved with it that was sanitizing some data before you put in there, and then you could damage the machine because you're not sanitizing that input because you've gone in and modified that screen. And so there are a lot of things that, and until you have built an OEM piece of equipment, you don't see why anyone would do it. But once you start building that OEM equipment, and you're the guy that's sending your piece of equipment across the country, there's definitely sometimes where it's like, all right, we're doing stuff here in order for safety, in order for productivity, and sometimes it's intellectual property. Sometimes I've got some blocks that we're doing some fancy stuff with some data and kind of like edge artificial intelligence processing that we're doing. I lock those down, and yeah, I lock them very, very hard down on those. So because yeah, but I'm also, if you need help, I'm gonna be there. And so like that's a bit of a difference. Moving back to buttons, yeah, who brought up Allen Bradley? you get -1 point, Lucid. -1 in internet point. I'm joking. We could talk about Allen Bradley. They have stuff. If they were absolutely terrible all the time, no one would use them, and they have a large install base in the US, so they apparently do some stuff right. There. I was nice. You could mark it down, clip it, and put me being nice to Allen Bradley. All right. Let's get back to the Siemens HMI talk. And let's talk about these buttons. What was I want to do about the buttons? Oh, the buttons. I want to talk about the appearance. So you kind of have all of these other things, and when you first start playing around, like this button, I just drug it out of our little toolbox here. I wanted to make a start button, and so I'm gonna say start, and that looks pretty cool, but it doesn't really look like a start button. So I kind of first want to go through and make that green, right? So the first thing that I want to do is say I want my background to be vertical, or I want it to be green, right? Well, I sit there and I'm like, why will it not let me change it to green? So it for some reason it's not letting me change it that way. So there is, here it is. Is this. You go to the fill pattern. So if you have on your appearance, if you have a solid, it lets you just do your green. And that looks all right. But honestly, that 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 looks like your buttons that your grandpa put on his Seymour Maple Systems HMI. Seymour's modern. I shouldn't bash Automation Direct, but this looks like your Maple Systems drawing. And we like that vertical gradient, right? Because it looks nice. We're gonna put that back there, and then we're gonna go to fill pattern, and here's where we can start kind of tweaking our buttons. Okay, that looks pretty good. So the background's green. All right, and then we can kind of tweak how far up that is, like that. Let's put that there to that same. Actually, let's just copy this code. This here. That. And then let's move this back down here. 8. All right. That's looking a little better, I think. Maybe. I don't know. But we can kind of tweak with that. If you notice also, I clicked off, and then the moment that I clicked back on, it goes back to where I was. So it kind of helps you with that. Well, just on your comment, Lucid. You have plenty of internet points, Lucid. You can take one for the team. With this, we can kind of like play around with it. Like I said, kind of make it look however. But anyway, so that's kind of our basic button. For those, we'll say you have these alignments. So this one is centered or centered middle. Left obviously moves it to the left of the button. Right to the right. Top. And that's if you have like fat buttons like that. So that's what all those are about. Most of the time you're probably going to do that unless you're doing something fancy where you have a button, and instead of this you say, I'm going to do a transparent button. Like that. I'm going to change my text to black, and then now I'm going to move in image that, and then I'm going to put this button over it like that. Except we had something like this. There's reasons you would do this. Like I have a thing to where I have a bunch of like displays, and they have like zones, and if you click on that zone, you want to go to like that focused in page. It's like a big overview page. I've got a bunch of overview stuff, and when you click, you want to go to the page that is just that page of just that stuff. And so that's why you would use this transparent button. So like I could have all of this text here, and I could take this transparent button, bring it over all of this, and as long as that button was on the very top, yeah, when you touch anywhere in that area, it would activate that button. If it is on the bottom, however, like in this case, you would have to touch, it's kind of subtle, but you would have to touch in that little gap area. And those are some of the things that are in, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I personally love to hear myself talk. My wife, not so much. It puts her to sleep though. Those nights when she's kind of like, just tired or can't go to sleep thinking about stuff, she just puts on my live streams, goes right to sleep. No, I appreciate the kind words. With this is one mistake when you're messing with kind of like the transparency of buttons that will annoy you to death, because you'll come on here and you'll download that screen, and then you won't actually, you may not test that button, or you you personally click when you touch in the little gap because you designed it and you have this kind of like built-in bias to use it the correct way. Well, I promise you, your operators, if there is a wrong way to use it, that's the only way that they're going to use it. They're only going to click on these little things, and then you're going to get a call at 2 o'clock in the morning, be like, I can't load my recipe. My machine won't start. And it's because you have an operator that's come in for the first time, and instead of using the actual push button on the console, he's trying to hit start on the button or on the HMI, and you have this layer is set to below the text, and so he's technically pushing on the text and he can't get to the button through the text. So always make sure that you're if you're using a transparent button, that you bring it all the way up to the top. And the way that you could check that it's going to be on the top is if you click and it selects the button, then it'll work. If you click and it selects the text, it's not going to work. So quick little tip, maybe it'll save you, but I promise you, you'll probably forget. You'll forget this, but can't say I didn't warn you. All right, so that's a little bit about buttons. There are a lot of stuff there. There's one thing here is a switch, and it's a big switch. So a little bit different than from a button. A button inherently, when you press it, it's going to trigger an event, and we're going to talk about events here in a second. A switch is inherently designed to toggle a tag. So like turn a tag on and off. So the difference though is you can, like with our little start button here, let's reset this back to solid and get it all nice and funny when I bring out this massive switch, I get the intense music, which by the way, my brother-in-law did all these beats. I kind of like them. But so let's go back and reset this, get this button back to something sensible. Up. Layout. Fine. Text format. Centered middle. Appearance. I want the text white. So we got our start button. So the difference between these two guys. Don't enable a visibility animation on the root screen. Is there some trauma there? Is there some trauma there, Lucid? Yeah, you're gonna have to, if that's something other than it not being on and you never get to see it, enlighten us, because that might be a new one for me. Just a little trauma. Your brain has blocked out the major part of it. Yeah, tell us about why you shouldn't do the visibility. I'm gonna make this switch look not as terrible while we wait. Because we can do something like this. Switch on. Now. So while we sit and wait for Lucid to relieve his trauma and relive it for us, we'll tell you a little quick difference about the difference between a button and a switch. A switch, I can't really show it to you. What's up, Saif? Welcome back. Our resident Dubai streamer or chat. He holds it down. If anybody else is from Dubai that's in here, y'all need to like I need to like meet up and talk about the channel. I don't know. Even yeah, if you do, I wouldn't think it would be sad, but we all know, we all get it. No one else understands. But the big difference between a button and a switch is that a button only activates an event. So if we look at like kind of our general, we don't have anything. We have events that every animation has, and we're going to talk about that here in a second. Oh gosh. Okay. Yeah, that Lucid, that does sound absolutely terrible. I'll have to next time I'm in town, we'll have to sit and we can have coffee and we could talk about it and we can yeah. So by the way, Lucid is one of my real life customers that he works at one of the places that has been critical in growing. I grew up working at the plant in terms of automation and helping out the company that he works for. So that's why we a little bit more. I know Lucid in real life. So this start button doesn't have any sort of like settings other than events. The switch, however, does. It has a tag setting. And when you bring this switch into your screen, you have the option to kind of flip it. On the screen, you can either double tap it or you can slide it, and it will flip a switch just like a light switch. And inherently, there will be a tag that, like you have a Boolean. One of the cool things about though, like if I wanted to switch a Boolean, if you have, and we haven't talked about tags at this point. We've just been kind of talking about the graphic stuff on it, but now's a great time to be able to show you how to import a tag from, or to set up a tag from, and set up a connection. So I think we set up a connection. I'm going to show you this. So there is a connections window that we already have set up. And remember in our little wizard that we went through at first, we went ahead and set up this connection. That's what that was, that CPU tech. So our 1515 TF is already hooked up. It's got a connection. But what if we had a tag, say, on this PLC? Oh, here we go. We have this tag here, this from main digital, okay? And that's on the Edge PLC. What if we wanted to get that tag? It's in the project, and we could go through and we could set up a connection like you'd have to do on an old, like other systems, or, which I like this better, we can use this thing called the detailed view, right? So if we select something over here, our detail view shows us what's in it. And the reason why this is important is because I can go to my little root screen here. I'm clicked on this switch, and look, my detail view is still over here. Well, if I want to put this tag and switch it by this switch, I haven't set this connection up. All I have to do is just drag it over, drop it in there. Now, if we go back to our connections, it sets it up. And why is it red? Oh, because it's not on the same network. Yeah, so I needed to have actually put this one on the same network, but let's see what it did. Yeah, so it's not on this network, but it would let you do it. So if we wanted a tag and we were actually connected onto that network, it just can't be on those same subnets. That's why that connection is red. And let's see if it tells you. Does it tell you? Is it smart enough to tell you? Hover. Maybe not. It just doesn't like it. Let's see if we compiled this, if it would tell us. Valid connection, local subnet, partner subnet, are different. Yeah, so it did. So what that did is, because you could drag and drop tags, because remember, all of these are in the same database. It's not quite, so I know for sure if you're using Somatic Manager, so step 7 Somatic Manager version like 5.6, 5.5, 5.6, something like that, with the 300 and 400 processors, and you could bring the older version of software, WinCC Flexible. You'd bring the old version of WinCC Flexible in, and it would all be available in the same project. But when you double clicked on WinCC Flexible, it would open up WinCC Flexible. When you double clicked on the PLC, it would open up the Somatic Manager viewer. Like, I mean, and it's opening up different programs. And while all of that information was in the same project, it was just like a zip file full of files. Well, in Portal, it's actually all the same database. And so your HMI has access to stuff that's available in the PLC, and it knows how to make those connections. So that's why you're able to drag and drop like that. The only reason it didn't work here is because I didn't have the subnets can't be connected because they are physically a different subnet. So you have Profinet Industrial Ethernet 1 and Profinet Industrial Ethernet 2, and they are on different ones. If we were to bring in and say like our Edge PLC and move it over onto this subnet and connect it up onto PNIE2, you would absolutely be able to do that, and this would work. Actually, if we did that, this would probably just come up and work. Once we compile the hardware, it would know that was there. So we have another question. So can both PLC and HMI simulated simultaneously in TIA Portal? Yes, you can. You can use PLC Sim and the HMI simulator at the same time, and so you can interface with your simulated HMI and interface in with the simulated PLC. So it's really cool, and so you can test all of those little bugs, and it will act exactly like that. So excellent question, and that is a really cool feature that you can set up all of this, and it's kind of hard to manipulate some of the data in the PLC sim. I don't know if everybody's watched this latest video that I put out that had the goofy intro in it with my mustache, but in it I didn't have a simulated HMI running, and so I was having to do a force table, and so you can tell when I like do my PLC logic, and I'm like, all right, we're just going to hit this start button. It kind of takes me a minute to like actually hit the start button because I'm having to go through it into a watch table and do it that way. So you wouldn't have to do that if you had a simulated HMI. So great question. So if now that we were talking about that switch, go back to the properties, and this would toggle that switch. If that connection was okay and it would compile, it would toggle that bit, because it would say, you would look at it and it would say, all right, it's off right now. You'd flip it and it would be on. And so the show label version is just the top label. And then so a lot of times what I will do with this is I don't like that label being on top. And so I'll take like some text. It'll be like this. And then I'll go like this. And then I'll click. First of all, I'll make this a little smaller. And then I'll say, all right, I want select this. I want this aligned, center aligned. And then now I'm gonna click off, select that, and then I'm gonna move it over, get a little close, but not too close, something like that. Or I could even go and take off. Again, I'm kind of just showing you some of the flexibilities. We had this layout. We could uncheck this box, and then we could make kind of like this a little bit size, and then appearance. We want the layout to be text format left, We want these boxes like this. And now I can go in here, appearance, and do a border. That. So. Oh, no problem. So we have a question kind of asking about, and I'm going to be kind of making this kind of look pretty while we talk about this. So the difference between SCADA and an HMI. So an HMI inherently is on its own hardware. So it's kind of like an embedded piece of hardware that you have that is specifically for interfacing into an industrial piece of equipment. SCADA kind of has the same thing, and if you've ever used like WinCC runtime, then that's kind of what this is. Or I guess it's WinCC Professional is the SCADA version. WinCC runtime is like SCADA Lite, and so the SCADA software kind of is a PC based version of this, whereas an HMI is a physical piece of hardware that you buy. Like I said, I don't have one. I wish I had one sitting here. I have all sorts of random crap in here. But a HMI is a physical piece of hardware that you buy and put in a panel. And that way that an operator can walk up, and usually it's touchscreen, and then can just operate there at the panel, at the machine. SCADA normally has all of the features of an HMI, but it's on someone's PC in an office or a control room, and it's connecting out to the equipment. SCADA normally also has much more capabilities to do data historians, which is like taking and recording values, like and being able to display them into different charts and different like historic trends and these different things. Your SCADA software usually has a better scripting engine, so you can do a lot more with SCADA. Now this has Visual Basic, or like VBA, so it's like Excel. This has like an Excel scripting engine in this panel, and so anything you can do in Excel, which is a lot, by the way. I'm about to get distracted, but you can do a lot in these panels, but you're limited by the software packages, because this is running on Windows CE, or it's like a Linux based system or something, whereas SCADA will run on like a full server, like your Windows server, and it has all of the terabyte hard drives and like all of the RAM and like all the processing, multi-core processors, all this stuff to be able to process an incredible, a lot more data. So in general, an HMI is for one machine, and SCADA is for an entire plant. We personally, and it's the Siemens, I'm being like, Siemens SCADA software is pretty good and it could do a lot with it, but my company is actually a gold certified ignition integrator, which is an incredibly versatile platform that is a SCADA platform that one of the other owners with me, he is a gold certified ignition platform engineer, and so we are a gold certified ignition integrator, and so that's our SCADA platform that we use. And some of the great things about it is that for reasonable amount of money in a SCADA platform system, you can have unlimited tags, unlimited connections, unlimited views, unlimited screens. Like it's an unlimited package, whereas a lot of other manufacturers, Wonderware, Wonderware, Siemens WinCC, they all are based on tags, And so the number of tags is how expensive the software is. And the software for SCADA, like Ignition is like a very, like, you get a lot for value, but even with it, it's going to be on the order of about $20,000 just for the software for an unlimited package. Now, for the equivalent of an unlimited package in another software, you're going to be looking at $60,000 to $100,000 sometimes, depending on how you cut it out, just for the software to run a SCADA platform. But that one server can connect out to every piece of equipment in your plant, and then people can connect into your server and pull up a web page, and then they have their own login credentials, and then you can see, oh, hey, I have this piece of equipment that I'm manager in this area. When I log in to the SCADA platform, it only gives me options to look at my equipment. And so think HMI, one machine, SCADA, whole plant. That's the kind of practical difference for it. So how long have we been going? Man, talk a lot. Yeah, hopefully that answers your questions. That is a very common thought about, like, I have used like some of the larger comfort panel. So for example, I have a fertilizer plant that's got about 75 or so motors in it. And I actually do what I call SCADA Lite in a 19-inch comfort panel, because it's big enough screen, and because there are multiple pieces of equipment, but it's like one motor and a couple of sensors on every piece of equipment. It's not a lot. There's only like 3 pieces of equipment that actually have more than just like basic digital IO. So I use that to control that whole plant and save the customer about $30,000 of work just to do that. Now, I have another fertilizer plant that has a much more complicated process. Still the same thing. They're bringing in stuff, bringing in ingredients, mixing them, drying them, mixing them, pelleting them. But we're actually using a SCADA, an Ignition platform on it, because that the capabilities that Ignition brings in, yeah, they're paying an extra $30,000 or so. But one, they have like 150 motors instead of 75, so it's like twice as big. And then what is actually going on, you have all sorts of things to where you want to have a computer interface, like a keyboard, to where you want to be able to type in or use a mouse to select inputs and stuff like that. It's well worth the extra $30,000. For their system, we're going to be implementing things such as like real-time commodity streaming, because in the Ignition platform, you can actually go out onto the internet, grab data off the internet, bring it into your projects. So what we're going to be doing is getting commodity prices for the ingredients, and then do things like batch optimizations, and say, so the user can go in and say, hey, I need a fertilizer with this batch, or with this protein mix, and I've put in all of my ingredients that are available in the plant. Now give me the cheapest version of fertilizer. Or you could say, what's the most profitable version? And then it can look at like all of this other stuff, and then bring it in, and then send a little bit of information down to the PLC, and then the PLC starts to actually make the batch. So you would not want to do that with an HMI, and so you do that with a big SCADA platform. So anyway, that was an excellent question. And honestly, the I think that most experienced engineers, at least the ones that are are good and like in as much as like are productive, they want to answer questions like that. And like, so to me, being able to say, hey, I've learned this, just kind of like Lucid did a little while ago. It's like being able to say, hey, I don't want you to have to like go through this pain. I want to be able to like teach you something. So I feel like a lot of engineers love passing on their information, love passing on. So there are no bad questions in this, unless you're asking about Alan Bradley, like Lucid. I'm joking, kind of. Anyway, let's get back to this. So I'm just kind of showing you some of these things that you can kind of do with the switches. And with this switch, you can turn it on and off. When it's flipped over, that Boolean, the tag value, will be 1. It'll be on. When it is off, obviously it'll be off. With the start button here, when you press it, you can set it up to where it toggles like that. You have to press it again. But think of it like a maintained push button or a momentary push button. That's kind of what you have here. So I think there are lots of other elements that are kind of like you can go through and do, but I think that for because we're already an hour and a half in, so let's kind of go through. I want to talk about events. Well, yeah, since we're talking about push buttons, I want to talk about events. So this switch you could think about as like a back and forth, and I'm doing this whole like 2-position switch. There actually is a way to kind of simulate that switch as well, and I'll show you that. Because you can go in here to general, you can tell what type, so mode, format, switch with graphic, and then the on switch, you can go through and let's see if we can find. I want to say that there is a like a thing like that. I'll give it like I don't think it's in here. There's like a pack that apparently I don't have installed. So you can install like graphic packs, and I know that there's one that's like a switch that you would see on a panel. And what you would do here, let's just do this. Don't want button icons. I know that's not the. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff. None of these are going to be it. I should have found these before, but you would be able to go and select an on graphic, and like you can select an on graphic. Yeah, none of these are it. So you could do like on graphic is left arrow, and then off graphic is right arrow. Yep. But you could also just select the different graphics that are like that. And so now when you would double click that it would flip between the two graphics. And so the way you would set it up is you would set on to be left and then off to be right, and then when you double click on it, it would go click and it would flip over and it would stay that way. Now if we wanted to, that's like a maintained switch. Well, this button it's like a momentary button by default, but it's actually how you set it up, because a button is based on events. It's not tied to a tag. So been talking about events, so let's talk about events. So we are clicked on this start button, and when we press it, we want something to happen. Now, if you notice, there's a couple of different things here, but most of the time you are going to be using the press, because so that's a positive edge of the press. And so when you click down on it and you hold it, it will stay active, and if you let off, it goes off. So that's what press means. click, I believe, is a full cycle. Don't mark my word on that. I always use press. So press, you have all sorts of functions here. Let's just take a look at a couple of them. A lot of functions. Okay, you have like system functions, which like earlier there's like a maybe it's not this. There's all sorts of stuff. You can look up all of these different things, but the ones that we're wanting to look at is these edit bits. Okay, so there's a couple that you're going to use a lot. You're going to use the set bit while key pressed, this guy here, and then you're going to use the invert bit. Those are probably going to be the most commonly used events that you're going to use, especially getting started out. And those, so what set bit while key pressed means, y'all are smart, y'all get it. It turns the bit on while you press it. When you release it, it's off. And so we can go in and look at our tag from here. And now I'm dragging that in from this same place, but it's not creating duplicate tags. It already knows that the tag's there. And so in this, I'm going to set that bit while I'm pressing it. Okay. That is the momentary version. And so let's go and just start typing in invert bit, because we know what we want now. And so this is a momentary push button, set bit while key pressed. And this is an invert. So this invert bit acts just like that switch. Okay. So that acts just like that switch. When you press it, it flips it. And then when you release it, nothing else happens. It stays whatever it is. It just flips that bit. Same thing as a switch. So that's what invert bit means. And again, you can go through and kind of look at some of the other ones. There's invert bits and tags, but right now that's a little much. And so let's look. I want to delete one of these because problem with having multiple events, it executes the first one first and then it executes the second one. And so, yeah, who knows what you would actually be getting there. Probably most of the time it would be getting like overwritten, because you're going to set it and then you're going to invert it and then you're going to release it and it's going to be back to zero. So it would never come on. But yeah, that is an event. Now, you can also do, let's see. Let's make another button. And here's a pretty valuable button. And now, especially if you're troubleshooting, getting stuff set up, you're installing a new system, something like that. And that says exit runtime. And on it, if you notice, I'm still on the events. I want to see if we can find this. Is it just... No, it's not. It is... So what we're trying to do is we're trying to find a bit or a function that that actually shuts off the runtime so that we can go and set settings, we can go change user administration, we can set up our smart client, because sometimes you'll accidentally change the startup time to where it is set to 0. Normally when you start up an HMI, there's like a 5-second delay where it starts up Windows, it brings up this little thing, and it has like options of start, transfer, settings, stuff like that. And in your settings, you can set the time for that into 0. And it won't pop up that screen. It'll just go straight into startup. So you'll need an exit runtime bit. I thought it was like shutdown runtime, but stop runtime. There it is. I knew we could find it. But yeah, so there you go. So stop runtime, you click that button, it stops runtime, it goes back and pops up the outside Windows screen. And now here's a cool little thing, a little feature that you have on that, and we're going to be moving on to kind of some other stuff. If you exit runtime, you're in like a Windows CE version. So you kind of have this like chopped down version of Windows. There's a PDF reader in there, so you can actually put manuals for things and like notes and stuff like that to where you can put it on a desktop. People can exit runtime and then do that. There's also advanced controls like a PDF reader, and we're going to go through some of these advanced controls here in a second because they're very powerful. The exit runtime, that stop runtime event, that is something that maybe you have a screen that is locked behind like an administrator password or something. That's stuff that you don't want just anybody get into. But that exit runtime is something that's good. So let's talk about a couple other things. We're an hour and a half in. Let's go and we'll talk about these templates and this stuff up at the top. So this down at the bottom is the template. This up at the top is what is called a permanent area. So what we're gonna do, that's not our HMI. This is our HMI. We're gonna go to screen management. And the first thing that we're gonna look at is the permanent area, because this is this guy up here at the top. Well, if we don't want a permanent area, we can just Control A, delete everything, and then I want to say there's a way to say use permanent area. But worst case, you can set it to 0. And then there is no permanent area. Because remember before when we set 0 to 0 or set our coordinate system to 0, 0, it locks it to the top of the permanent area. And that's what this is here. I want to say, let me see something. Thought that there was a thing here. Guess not. I want to. That's runtime settings are a little more advanced, but that's what the permanent area is. So that kind of just gives you this screen is always on everything. And honestly, that's kind of the way that I use on my bigger systems. I have kind of like my overview buttons. I use them on that. And so they also, yeah, so it's not a global screen, but there should be a template that has these buttons. And so now you can modify all of these buttons. And so you can delete this template and we go back to our root screen and those buttons are no longer there. So the thing about using the difference between like a template and a permanent area, the permanent area is only up at the top. A template can be anywhere. So you can have a template that has a certain amount of buttons coming down on the side, and then you just have like your graphic area. And one of the things about a template, so we can have our template for we'll just add this new template, and this is modifying that template. So let's put in just something here. This thing and some text like that. And if we go in and we go to our other screens in our screens folder. If you remember when we set this up, we made 2 screens. So we have a root screen that we've been playing with this whole time, and we have a screen 0. Now, when you come into screen 0, you can click on the actual screen itself, go to properties, and then select the template that it is using. You notice, because we deleted that before, it doesn't, we deleted that template and it hasn't been updated. So let's go in and select our new template. Cancel, not that, this. And then now you see that template that we have that we just made is over here. Now, if you notice, we could put stuff over the top of that and interfere with it. So a permanent area, you don't have that option. It's like it doesn't exist on your screen. With a template, it just puts stuff in the background layer that is part of that template. So just be aware that if you put something like this over something on the template, it's all like your template layer is always on the bottom. So just keep that in mind. Good. Let's look at, we've talked about templates, permanent areas. What did I say? I don't want to be a liar on my description of this. Oh, yeah, I remember. Alarms. Diagnostics, I should say. Get all this junk off of here. Oh, one thing I do need to show you. You notice this back button here? The screen navigation. And the best way, I mean, there are ways that you can like use different events. So like I'll show you this. So I've clicked just on the screen itself, and you can go to events on the screen itself, and you have this loaded and you have this cleared. Now this is a very valuable way to make sure that, like, if you come into a screen that like is like a manual mode setting, and like you want to make sure that if someone leaves that page, that it kicks the machine out of manual mode, that you have to be on that screen with all the control in order to do that. You can use this. You can say, all right, this is my manual mode screen, and if it is cleared, I want to set or clear bit or reset bit. We can do reset bit, and so that would turn off a bit, and then you could say like manual mode and kind of go from there. That's a cool thing, and you get that by clicking on the screen itself, go to properties, events, and there you have your loaded and cleared events. Yeah. So screen numbers, that's a property thing that's built into the tag thing on this. How else would we navigate back between screens? A couple of different ways. This back, let's see how it's set up. So this is on a release, which is interesting. It is tied directly to the root screen. Because remember when we set up in that it said, okay, the root screen, and then it goes to screen 0, whichever one this is, or screen 1. Yeah, this is screen 1. And then you have a button for screen 0 as well. So you have both of them. Well, this is tied directly. Well, sometimes you don't care about how you got there. Like there's multiple ways to get to that same place, and you want to go back to whatever page you came from. Because it would be really annoying for me to navigate onto this screen and then click back and then have to navigate all the way back and then click back, then navigate all the way back. Well, there is also a way, an actual back button. It's activate, maybe not. Maybe it's not going to pull it up. It's going to make me look dumb. This is, I'm in the wrong spot. I made myself look at activate previous screen. And that's just it. There's no function. So what that does is wherever you came from, it's going to activate that screen. So you're going to go back to that. And so a better way to kind of do like a home button would be to like make something that it is a graphic, and we're gonna pick our graphic. Appearance. Where's our graphic? I must have missed it. But yeah, so like have a button that is a like a home button. Or let's do this. No, that's not what I'm wanting. I'm wanting to drag this onto that button. There we go. So I like this button now has that graphic because it's a graphic button. And so maybe I want that to be like, I want this to be alarm like this. Okay. So I click there, go to events, press, activate screen, screen name, alarm screen. And so straightforward, simple button, click there. Now when you click that button, it will activate the alarm screen. Now I won't select everything on here, delete that. I don't want to use a template. So I'm going to go to properties, general template, none. Oh, this, because I am going to bring in this one. What? Nope. This one. Nope. This one. Here we go. Bring in an alarm view. I just drug that in. And by default, this is set up to have, and I won't go through all of this, but because you bring this in and by default, this will have, we kind of set these up before. Pending alarms, unacknowledged alarms, and there's already a button to acknowledge the alarms on there. Yeah, so there's a lot of different things on this. And what this is if you're using a 1500 processor, yeah, so yeah, I'll answer your question in just a second. So because this alarm diagnostics, so if you have all of these built-in diagnostics in like a S7 processor, like the ET200IO that you use, if you have a Scalance switch, there's a little box that says enable system diagnostics. If you check that box in any of these device and networks things, you will be able to, let's see if I can find one for this. Or I guess I would need to have it on here. And so I want to say, not exactly sure where it is on the drives, but there's a little checkbox that says just enable diagnostics. Why is that all off? Anyway, that is, there's a little box in here, and if you check enable system diagnostics, it will populate them when you bring up this alarm view window, and that's what these are. So current alarms, that's just system diagnostics that are tied into the PLC. And if you go through and you could set them up to where like that actually sends the fault and warning information from your drives, your switches, like your Ethernet switches, your remote IO racks, any of your ET200 IO, say, hey, I've got a wire break on this channel. It is really awesome. And honestly, like having this screen, you pull up this screen, thumb through it, most of the time it's going to have a line that says, hey, here's what this problem is, and it's usually going to be sitting kind of up towards the top. But that's all you have to do to get the basics set up on that, and then all this other stuff is kind of just the way it looks. But yeah, so that's diagnostics, and me only doing like 3 or 4 minutes on that, it's kind of a disservice to how amazing those really are, because it will save you so much, especially if you have a machine operator. You can just say, hey, go to the click, and I normally put that this button here, I normally put that in a permanent area on the top of my screen, and I'll just say, hey, click on the exclamation mark and tell me what it says there. Just start reading everything that it says there, and eventually I'm like, oh, it sounds like you blew a fuse on this remote panel, because it'll say something like error in communication to scalant switch, error in communication to remote rack, blah blah blah, and it's all because you took the time to name everything very well. So when someone calls you about it, they don't have to know the system. You can just tell them, read what's on this page. So, all right, have another question about what is runtime, and the runtime is the actual kind of software load. So if you think about the way a PLC works, is you have what's called a little bit of an operating system on a PLC, because you have like the little switch to where you can put it into run, and then put it into stop, and then you can do like a reset. And so you can run your code, you can not run your code. Well, there's obviously something behind that switch is connected into, and it's saying, hey, run the code or not. So there's a piece of software that's always running. On a computer, like a laptop, that's called your operating system. That's Windows, Linux, whatever flavor operating system you run. Well, the same thing is in play here. The PLC just has a very custom operating system that you don't even realize is actually running. Well, in an HMI, it is like a little embedded system. Like it has its own version of Windows that it is running behind the scenes. So it boots up Windows, and then Windows says it's configured to say, oh, I need to run these specific programs. Like you could do that on your computer. Like, for example, if you use like the Discord app, like the Discord app will start up immediately. So Windows comes on, starts up, and then it starts loading up stuff. Well, runtime is kind of like Discord or a web browser or whatever. It's just a specific program that has all of the information to interface out into like your PLC and kind of how to run and kind of do all this stuff here. So runtime is actually your program. And we talked about the difference between like SCADA and HMI, and like the biggest difference between SCADA and an HMI is that SCADA runs on a full-blown operating system. Most of the time it'll run on a server quality operating system that most of us never, like kind of consumer people, never really even use. This runs on what is called an embedded operating system, and this version is for the comfort panels. The operating system is Windows CE, so it is actually a specific version of Windows that's like meant to run on like not full-blown computers. And so you can think about your HMI as being just a very specific, like a tablet almost, just not with Android. It's running this version of Windows that can load specific programs. Well, runtime is that software. And so if you say exit runtime, it would be like, say, hey, close Discord, like actually close out Discord. and it would shut that down. And then later on, you could say, all right, I updated my profile or whatever. Now I want to reopen Discord. Same thing. Runtime is the program that your HMI screens and everything. You're developing a program when you are developing these screens. And the differences between the basic panel and the comfort panel in terms of runtime is really just the features that are available to you in basic are just a little not quite as you can't quite do as much with the basic panel that you can with a full-blown comfort panel. And honestly, I can show you one of those differences with a basic panel, and I don't understand why it is this way. Let's go back to our root screen. And so like we have this, we've talked about events. So hopefully the explanation about runtime, think of it about as a program that's running in Windows, because it is. And then you can exit out your program and then change and configure stuff and then restart your program. And that's what runtime is. And that's on both SCADA and HMIs. Even on the other version, the WinCC Unified, the only difference is that WinCC Unified runs instead of on a Windows-based operating system, it runs on Linux. And so it has its own version programs, because a lot of programs that run on Linux or run on Windows won't run on Linux. And so it's the same thing. There's a specific version of runtime that is created on those panels, but it's essentially just a program. So let's talk about the difference now between the basic panels and the comfort panels. And we're talking about animations. So animations get tied to a tag. And think about it as saying, if a tag is a certain thing, your animations, your button, your box, whatever, will look a little bit different. And so that's what animations are. You're variably, like over here in your properties, your appearance, think about it as a variable appearance tab. So we go to animations, and I can go and say, hey, here is my appearance. I want to make dynamic colors and flashing. So the stuff that's on that. And so I can click on this, add a new animation to appearance. And then what you can do, you can go back onto your details view like we had before. And we can go, and I know that this is that same PLC, but we can drag a tag in, and it's a Boolean, right? Well, we go to it. If it is a 0, we can change the color. If it is a 1, we can change the color to something, and we can make it flash. Whatever. I know I told you earlier, for those that y'all have been on here for a while, thank you for making through it. If you're new, like the stream, get it out there. Thank you. Thank you for joining in. But earlier I talked about you would never want to set your appearance to be flashing just because it's kind of obnoxious. Well, if you use the animations, it's totally fine to do flashing, because you can set it up to where, hey, if there's no fault on my drive, then my little fault number is not going to be flashing red. So that's what we do here. So on a Boolean value here, we have options of 0 and 1. Well, sometimes, so it's an option of 0 or 1 on that Boolean tag. Well, there is a thing here to where if our tag is an analog, so like an integer, that gives you this other option as a single bit, which is kind of cool. This little option here, this single bit, it isn't available on the basic panels, and so you can't do like single bit out of an integer. So you can't like make like a status word and then be pulling out of that. We got we're 2 hours. We can also, and Lucid actually went through and warned us about something, and we are on this root screen. So Lucid says don't do this on a root screen, so let's change something on one of our other screens. So like screen 1, I want to make this, I'm still on the animations tab, I want to make this thing only appear if I have a tag that I only want it to be visible on a certain range on a tag. So with our, so if it is 0, because that is a digital, so if it is 0, we want this thing to be invisible. Okay. And honestly, I like get this backwards most of the time, so I may be telling you backwards on this. So you probably just need to play with this on your own. But you can take that digital input and tie it to something like manual mode, and your buttons for manual mode are only visible and available if that manual mode is turned on. Just kind of like, and that's what you're doing here. We kind of talked about movements, all sorts of stuff. Again, these are all animations that are available to you. I kind of told you about a little fun thing that I made a hamburger run down belts at a coal mine, using those movements just because I was bored. But yeah, with all that said, these are kind of what animations are. Think of them as like variable appearance tags. And the biggest that you're going to be doing is colors. Well, I guess it's 3: colors, flashing, and visibility. Those are 99% of what you're going to be using is going to be those 3 things. And you could do alarm pop-up. Okay. So, an alarm pop-up. So let's talk about pop-up windows. And I will be a little honest with you that I haven't used these very much. This is something that I've just started using, is pop-ups. And the pop-up screens are here in screen management. Pop-up screens. We're going to add a new screen. Let's make an alarm window. And the problem that I have found is that like the size of this window is like you have to manually set it, which is kind of like annoying. But I guess if you were smart enough to know the resolution, then, which I'm not, we'll just do something like this. Give us a little window. You put an alarm. Ooh, that's terrible. You put an alarm view on here, and you want this thing to be layout. You want it to be 750. 750. So all I'm doing is just making one of my alarm views onto a pop-up window. And so I make an alarm view that's on a pop-up window, and it has to be set up as a pop-up screen. Right? Fortunately now it's going to be hard for me to all right, so I have made a mistake because now I can't select the I'm wanting to select this because I want to say that I think it's a system. Maybe it's a system. So let's do this. Go back here. And you see what I was doing? I was clicking on the actual screen itself in order to adjust the properties of the screen. But I want to say that there is a runtime setting on alarms. And I thought that you could trigger an event. Maybe not. Once you have that set up, I mean, so I've never actually done like an alarm pop-up to where it pops up on its own. I've always had it pop up to where you hit a button to pop up the screen. But I know you can do that because there is a somewhere where you can trigger like a system event, and I thought it was here, but maybe I'm just not seeing it, that when you have an event that you can activate that page. And I'll show you, there's like on a button version, the event is like, if I have a screen here and I want to activate pop-up, I go to events and then press, and then there's is it activate pop-up, or no, it's like, okay, so I'm gonna have to find it real quick. This is a great question because this is one of the things that like can really set you apart in your displays and stuff like that. So screen, there should be show pop-up screen. Okay. So the way that you use the show pop-up screen, it like configure it. Obviously, you select your pop-up screen that we made, that, and then where you want it to be, because your pop-up screen might be like this would show up in this top corner and it would just pop up right there, but maybe you want it in the middle, and so you can set those XY coordinates. Be like 200. But here's a problem. So that'll readjust that window in that. And oh, maybe it's big. Apparently my 750 size pop-up is not good enough. Anyway, so excuse me. So we've got that, and so now this button, when we click it, would pop up that pop-up, because it's toggling on and off. So it's just toggling on, toggling off. But I want to say that there is a system event that will trigger that. I just honestly I'll have to look it up. So I'm gonna write down, where's my, I'm gonna write down and make a short about that, because that is very valuable information and I would love to have that. Let me write a note down before I forget, because the second that I get off the stream, I'll forget it. Uh-oh, almost knocked my wall down. It's definitely a brick wall behind me. 100% definitely a brick wall. Yeah. Make word. Awesome. Thank you for that question. That was a great question. So I got you maybe like 90% there, but that is you make a pop-up screen and then you just have to figure out how to trigger it. And so what I'll do is I'll make a short I'll put up a short about it. So if you haven't subscribed, subscribe to the channel. And if you haven't subscribed, you probably would be my 1000th subscriber if someone hasn't already subscribed on here. But yeah, so that's that. So the last thing that I was wanting, or I was going to talk about, just mention, just to put it into your mind, is it's called faceplates. And there are some pretty crazy, awesome things that you could do with faceplates. And I'm not going to go too deep into them on this, because I actually need to get to a convention, go get my convention badge here in a minute. But what a faceplate does is it creates essentially a set of it's like a screen, and it's like a set device. And not only, like, you could pull in a graphic, for example, but every time you pull that graphic in, say you have like a conveyor belt and you want to have running status, speed, current, a fault code for the drive, a warning code, like whatever. Every time you pull that graphic in, it doesn't have all the other information. And so what a faceplate does is you essentially make a screen that is a screen area, and that gets brought in, and there's what's called an interface into it, and you can actually put tags that automatically plug into your lights for your conveyor. And I can show you, I think, an example of a faceplate. I will have to pull this up live, and let's see, open, and I've got a global library here that I think has some faceplates in it. I'll have to do probably another video on how to make a faceplate. But so I have this Alpha Industrial library here, and my face is in the way. Ooh, not that. Want this. So I opened up my global libraries here, and my light. So wipes. So all I do is just drag this in, and this is a screw conveyor that I've made. And what this has, so it is a faceplate, and so you can say it's a faceplate instance here. And I don't like that. I'm gonna put me back down here. So you have the faceplate. Oh my gosh, that's hard to say. Faceplate instance, and you have properties. Basically, just how big is it? That's all it is. You have this interface, and so I have set this faceplate up to be a conveyor status word. So it is a specific type. It is a specific PLC data type that I've created, and if I take one of those, I don't have any in this project, and it is a single word, the status word, I can just drag it from over from this side, drag it from over there, drag it into this little connection box right here, and yeah, once it's connected, all of those individual tags. So like on the PLC, I have this function block that controls this conveyor belt. Well, there's a status word, because I look at like, what's the last shutdown? What's the status of the motion sensor? What's the status of the plug sensor? all of these different things. Is it running? Did it fault out? Did it get shut down by sequence? Blah, blah, blah. Like all these different things. And I put that all into a bunch of bits. Well, I just throw that bunch of bits into here and everything's connected. So if I add in another conveyor later on, I can just do Control C, Control V, and then put it there. Let's line this up, and then pop, pop, pop. And then now all I have to do is go in and connect that, connect that, connect that, connect that, and all of it's done. And instead of having to individually go in and connect in all of those bits, it took me a very long time. It would take me 2 minutes to set up this. That's a faceplate. Don't have time to go through it right now because there's a ton of stuff in it. And honestly, it's not really a basic thing because it takes a little bit of mindset on the front end to be able to set your blocks up to where you can interface into this. And honestly, I don't have any of these blocks. I mean, I do, and I have them in this global library that I could drag into a PLC, but yeah, we'll save that for next time. Yeah, so this has been, I think, a pretty decent overview of what is available and kind of to get started in an HMI. The biggest thing that like is just drag your tags into a property and it makes the connection. And if it doesn't have the connection for you, it will, if there isn't already a connection, then it will make the connection for you. That's honestly the easiest way if you have a Siemens PLC and you have a bunch of tags, and it doesn't have to be tags, by the way. I don't think I have anything. I don't think I have any data blocks in these. No, I don't. But if you were to click on like a data block, for example, like you would be able to just drag out of this details view over here on the left. You would be able to drag that into a property and it would make that connection into a data block. So that really goes back to making good function blocks and making good data blocks. And it all comes back together because if you make a good thing once, you can keep reusing that over and over and over again. And Portal unlocks this crazy ability to just like, hey, to throw together really good looking screens really quick. And so you're like, hey, I needed to add an extra screen on here, but I've got this process that's going, all right, I need to add this stuff in. Click, 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 click. Drag, 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 drag. Compile, save. Okay, all right, it's good. Really quick, all because of that drag and drop capability. And you take that to the next level with things such as faceplates, and kind of talked a little bit about pop-ups. And yeah, so like most of what you're going to be working with in your HMI journey and really SCADA journey is going to be your standard buttons, text, kind of these standard features that you're going to go over and over and over again, like boxes, changing colors. Then you're going to start adding in events. You're going to be changing bits and values, starting and stopping motors with like the event. So set bit while key pressed, reset bit, those sorts of things. And then you will go through and start animating things. And so, yeah, that'll really get you going a long way. And so, but that is what we are for today. I mean, we've had a good bit of people come on today. I really appreciate it. We're starting to have people that put out the stream invite or whatever out early, and people coming in, and that just makes me so happy that people enjoy this content, and it's for you guys. And so if you have a question about something, find a video that kind of talks about it. If it misses, comment on it. I go through all the comments. I try to reply to every comment. And yeah, if it's not well addressed, or I don't think it's very well addressed, I will go through and address it on one of these. Try to have them every Friday. I'll probably actually be able to do one this Friday, because this past Friday I was off grid, and my Starlink didn't have good enough upload to do a good stream. So, but yeah, so glad that y'all are part of this community. We should be hitting 1,000 subs. Let's see if we've hit it. You my channel. Yep, we have. Congratulations, you guys. We hit 1,000 subs on this actual this stream. So actually 1,004. Wow. All right. So good. Welcome. I can't thank y'all enough for I guess being a part of this. It's so fun for me. I mean, I do this because I enjoy it. Like, obviously I have an automation company that I am very involved in, and we love doing work. But so normally on Fridays I try to do it at 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I'm in Atlanta, and so all of my stuff is on Eastern Time, and try to do it at 11, just so that we can kind of get two different groups of lunchtime here in the US, and it kind of works out for some of the European people being able to be getting off work and being able to come in as well. So normally it's 11 o'clock a.m. on Fridays. But yeah, I can't thank y'all enough for taking part of this. It is very fun to do these videos. I love being able to help people learn stuff. That's what I do. I have, you'll hear me talk about my dad a lot. He was always able to teach me, and I just want to pass that sort of stuff on to you guys. So it has always, as always, it has been great part of this journey, and it's for y'all. And hopefully you're able to grow, you're able to make a better life for you and those around you. And yeah, I thank you for it. And yeah, I will again try to be here on Friday, and if not, I'll let y'all know, and I'll try to get a couple of other videos out, maybe some shorts and stuff. But again, appreciate you, and yeah, we will get going next time. Until then, keep learning, keep asking questions, and just keep trying to improve everything around you. Talk to you later.